Backup quarterback. That's always a...
Yeah, well, backup quarterback, obviously we're still, we hadn't even named a starter at this point last year, I think, when we were talking to you guys. So we're doing a little bit better in that regard. We know who our first string quarterback is. I do think the picture is becoming a little bit clearer every day at that number 2 battle. But we're going to let it play out for just a little bit longer and then kind of figure out where we're at moving into next week. But obviously that's important.
How long do you have to let it play out? You got the 4-game rule now and some different things that, to your benefit.
When you really think about how you want to use that rule to your advantage, becomes a little bit more difficult with the quarterback position because if you think about it, letting it play out, first of all, you're not guaranteed any reps for those guys earlier in the year, and even if you give a young guy some reps to kind of see how he does, say you have a long-term problem at quarterback, you're going to want to know who that guy's going to be, and I'm not sure you can totally figure that out if you're piecemealing guys in and out of there in the early games, but the first thing you'd have to do is get an opportunity to play some guys, and that's certainly not a given.
Do you have a top 5 on the offensive line for week 1 and then week 2?
Well, yeah, I think you try to have about a top 8 for the offensive line, period. And then the hard part in week 1 is that's really a top 6. Mm-hmm. We've put ourselves in that situation, so we feel pretty good about where we're at with that. And you're probably looking at 6 guys for 5 spots in that first game, and then as we move forward, probably 6 guys for 5 again, but with 8 names in the boat, if that makes sense.
Right. Is Levi? Is he okay? Is he in? Is he
Levi
practicing?
Paulson?
Yeah.
Yes, he's practicing, and he would be in that 6.
In the 6.
Right.
He's getting to work at tackle. Like, I know he's got.
Yeah, well, I think what we have to do is he's played both tackle and guard for us. He obviously filled in the bowl game, played right tackle. He's played guard for us. That was Illinois 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. So he's got experience at both positions. What that allows you to do, it just gives you a little bit of flexibility. Maybe with a guy like Mark Kallenberger, who for now we'd probably rather leave on the outside. Mm-hmm. So if you want to fill those holes and fill those spots, having a guy with some versatility allows you to kind of mix and match a little bit.
Is running back sorted itself out at all, or
I think the picture is definitely getting clear. Yeah. But we still feel really good about the 3 guys we have, sure. And that's the good news. You look at a guy like Mekhi Sargent; he just continues to impress you. So going into camp, I felt like we had 2 guys that we felt pretty good about. Now I feel like we have 3 guys we feel pretty good about. Hey, that's great right now. Week 0.
Sure.
I'm hoping in week 12 we still have 3 guys we feel pretty good about, because if the pass is any indicator, it's kind of like that offensive line. That's why you got to have a number like 8 just to get you through 12 games with 5. So the good news right now is there's 3 guys there. I think it would be foolish of me to try to say this guy's the best, that guy. We just have good group with 3. I know we're going to need all 3 to carry the ball.
Is that a situation then with the talent there that you could see splitting those carries all the way into maybe October before you're like, hey, here's a
potentially.
Yeah.
In my experience, that stuff just kind of works out.
Yeah.
You go back to, I guess, 2015. Really, you had that year. You ended up having Jordan Canzeri was just under 1,000. I forget what Akram finished with, and LaShawn was over 1,000. I think that year, maybe. I don't know, but you had 3 guys that really took the bulk of the work that year.
Yeah.
But shoot, there were various points in the year where only one of them was getting carries. At Northwestern that day, Akram was the only guy carrying the ball. He was the only guy that was available. We had Jordan for like 3 plays, and now, hey, Akram, please don't get hurt, because the next step is we got fullback in there running inside zone, and I don't know if anybody wants to see that besides their parents. So, you look at that thing, I think it'll work itself out, but when you have 3 guys in the stable that are healthy, then it's just kind of a matter of who's got the hot hand, where are things at a certain point in the game, and that's how those things kind of shake out.
You've got a really fast tight end in Fant, a really fast receiver in Smith-Marset. Does that give you some flexibility to do some things you normally wouldn't do, or is it more the same, just figuring out a way to do it?
Well, I think the whole thing is built, really, when you look at it, we need to have speed on the outside. Mm-hmm. Because as an offense, I don't care how you play, if you can't threaten the defense vertically down the field, you're going to have issues. And the easiest way to do that, just because of how structures work, is to do it on the perimeter. Right? That's as far away as you can get from the safeties, whether it's cover 2, cover 1. Right? You have to have perimeter speed. So I do feel like we're making progress with getting some guys on the outside that can really run and threaten the defense, whether it's Noah, whether it's Amir, a guy like Brandon Smith who's done a nice job coming along. Those guys, they give you a little bit something out there. And then if you look at Noah and Brandon Smith, they have big bodies too. So that really helps the situation. But I think now what we can do is what we really want to do, not necessarily anything differently. If you look at how we've played in the past, just there's certain games where if you cannot throw the ball down the field, or you're unwilling to throw it down the field, it gets really hard offensively to move the football.
Yeah, at Kids Day, there seemed like there was a rotation of 4 wide receivers. Is that active? Is that stuck? And do you guys want to add more? Obviously, probably.
It's like the other positions you mentioned. Really, at that group, you'd like to have 6.
Mm-hmm.
I think right now we have 5 guys that I'm confident in going into a game, and as a staff, we feel pretty good about. How that rotation shakes out between those guys, I think a lot of that's going to have to be situational or personnel driven.
Mm-hmm.
But you'd like to have 6. Right now, I really feel strongly there's 5. And then whether or not it's 3, 4 in a game, 2 in a game, it just depends on how the game
is.
Is
Cooper the 5th?
Right now, I would probably say, if you looked at that thing, Max Cooper's had a really good camp. Yeah, he's a really good camp, and I would feel comfortable saying he's the 5th right now.
Is there a guy
what has he shown you?
I'm sorry?
What has he shown you this camp that you didn't see?
I think Max has grown up a little bit. That's part of it. You look at a guy who's a true freshman last year. So just from a maturity standpoint, we're a little bit further along. Last year, this was probably the hardest thing he'd ever done in his life. Now he's had a whole year of this. And then he's grown physically, too. Guy's added some size. He's gotten a little bit bigger. Last year, he's got very sneaky speed, I think, for his physical appearance. But he didn't have much girth, right? So this was a guy that if the defense made contact with him, you could really forget about any kind of spacing or any kind of speed. So I think he's made a lot of progress in the weight room in the course of the year, and that's a credit to him.
Brian, when you look at Ivory Kelly-Martin, last year he flashed sometimes, showed really good quickness and burst, and he seems to be bigger than you actually look at him. I mean, he's like 200 pounds. Is he the type of guy you feel like that can really elevate and play all 3 downs consistently?
Yeah, I think that's one of Ivory's strengths. Obviously, he's got some wiggle.
Yeah.
He's got some power. He's got really good balance. I heard a pretty smart guy once talk about backs and whether or not guys have balance. Can they get hit and continue to run? Some guys can, some guys can't. He's the guy, Makai's the same way, very difficult to bring down. They have enough power, but if you don't bring them to the ground, they will find a way to stay upright and keep moving. So those things are really good, but one thing he does a nice job of is catching the ball in the backfield. So that gives him a 3rd down element. There's plenty of stuff we do to free release those guys and get them involved. But the flip side of that is sometimes you have those guys on 3rd down that do a great job coming out of the backfield and catching the ball, but they're not so good stepping up into the A-gap and handling pressure when we need to be in a 6 or 7-man protection. He can do that, which gives him that added element of being really a 4-down player for us. That's a pretty good deal. And, the other thing he did a nice job of, and you look at our good backs in the history of our program, a guy who did a really nice job on our punt team last year as a gunner. He's been good in the return phase for us, so he's had some special teams value as well.
So do you anticipate him taking number 1 snaps along with Torin probably splitting there, or is Ivory kind of distanced himself a little bit?
Yeah, I think right now if we open the season, he's going to be behind center carrying the football right now. But like I said, there's 2 other guys that we feel pretty good about carrying the ball. That's a good problem to have.
How much better does that running game need to be for the offense to take a step this year?
Sure. It's funny, I was talking to the guys from Big Ten Network yesterday, and they asked, what were some areas of focus going into the season? And when you look at going all the way back to spring, coming off our self-scout, if we're going to be successful here, we need to be able to run the football. And we need to do it when everyone knows we're going to do it. Otherwise, we have no chance. So you look at the way we rushed the football last year, that's not going to be good enough to win at a consistent or a championship level in our league. And that's what we're striving for. The goal is to win championships. The goal is to play consistently week in and week out. If we can't establish the run game from the opening snap of the season to the closing whistle of Game 12, I think it's going to be hard for us to have any kind of sustained success offensively.
And right now, would you say that Kallenberger will open at left tackle first game, and probably Levi Paulson?
Yeah, I'm
right
not as
tackle?
confident to give you a starting lineup right now. I'll let the head coach handle that stuff.
Okay.
The back thing I feel good about, but I think with the offensive line, we got to figure out really in the next 4 days what gives us the best chance to win moving forward for week 1.
It seems like you guys, the attitude you're taking into that week 1 with both of your tackles is, let's do this, and time to build some depth, and time for some guys to have some opportunity. Is that what you're throwing to your guys?
Do you have a better attitude
No,
that we can
no.
take into? But in all seriousness, look, we're in a situation that is all of our own doing.
Right.
Right. So this is the University of Iowa. You cannot get out of jail on Thursday and play on Saturday. That's not how it works here. So, people are worried about discipline issues, things like that. I don't see it that way. I see isolated incidents that we're going to address and we're going to take care of moving forward so that we don't have an issue. And really, frankly, if you're not going to do the things that we're going to ask you to do off the field, then you don't deserve the opportunities to be on the field. And I think it's pretty simple. So the whole team sees that. Hey, look, it's an opportunity for other guys to step in. In a perfect world, I think the best lesson we could teach some of these guys not playing in game one is they didn't have a job in week 2. Boy, that'd be great if some guys stepped in and took their jobs over. Right? And I would have no issue with that. But I also know this, whether it's suspensions, whether it's injuries, whether it's any of these things, when we get to week 4 or 5, we're going to need some guys to step in anyway. Things are going to happen in the season.
Right.
Better to have them week 1, let's just deal with them. But if you just cross your fingers and hope you can go through 12 weeks with the same 12 guys, I'm yet to be a part of one of those.
Yeah.
You look
One
at
or
tight
two
end.
more?
With tight end, you are deep. What kind of what can you do differently, maybe because tight end number 4 and 5 are as good as most teams 2 or 1? What can you do differently on offense because you're able to have those many players?
Well, that's pretty ambitious. We're as good as some people's 1 and 5.
Well, you're 4.
You're going to get me to go Nick Saban on this. I'm just kidding, Scott. But no, you bring up a good point. We do have a deep group there. And I think it's like the running back group. Do you need to get creative? There were times last year we felt like, boy, we had 2 really good backs. Can we get them on the field at the same time? And we tried to do a little bit of that before we had some injuries, going back to the opportunities, right? And then that wasn't as big a focus. But the goal on every snap is, can we get 11 guys on the field? Who are our best football players? Do we have 11? Do we have 12? Do we have 13? Who are they? And then can we make sure they're involved in the plan? And not so much just targeting them, but getting them out there so there's opportunities for them to get the football and get involved. So certainly that's something we got to take into account with those times.
Last question. I was going to say, your head coach had said, I think it was in the spring, that Spencer Petras a little further along than you might have anticipated.
Sure.
Is that continuing in camp?
He's done a heck of a job. And I told Spencer the other day, the day he was here on his official visit, my wife and I had a child. Okay, so just to put in perspective for Spencer, right? My daughter just started crawling yesterday. He's out there taking reps with our second offense, getting us in and out of things, right? He's a little further, he's like walking, which is pretty good. So Connolly is crawling, he's walking, and if we can get him running here, maybe in the first year of life, that's pretty good. But he's done a tremendous job. When you look at where he was 8 months ago versus where he is right now, it's really hard not to be pleased with the guy. But the flip side of that is nobody really cares where he was 8 months ago if we put him in a football game. So we got to keep pushing him along and getting to where he needs to be.
Thanks for your time.